Hold on a second.
Okay, so it will be the first question. Very open questions. I think all the questions in this class is very thought provoking. It says, in your business or field, which kind of opportunities does one ordinary look for? And I put my answer. I put in higher pay. Then the second question to number one question is, how would you define a golden opportunity? I answer, sacrifice and discipline, because opportunities are blessings, and if you are not ready for them, the right discipline, you will miss the blessing. In parentheses.
Okay, are those
because you didn't realize what it was. That is, it was for you. You didn't realize it was for you. So, I like those questions when it talk opportunities, because I always relate them to blessings. And sometimes we don't have the ears or the eyes to see the blessings that God has for us.
okay? So a golden opportunity. Yeah, the world looks at things as, kind of luck but like Tolan says, we know they're actually blessings from God, and whether we enter into that or not is our choice, right? So which of the 8 characteristics in the chapter have you worked hardest to establish in your life? Taking responsibility for your actions, developing personal discipline, knowing your weaknesses, aligning your priorities with your values, admitting wrongdoing quickly and asking forgiveness, taking extra care with finances, putting your family ahead of your career, or placing a high value on people.
Probably would be personal discipline, so you can kind of know what you're doing, too little, too less, and too much, and kind of keeping things in order, things and how you want to do things and steps in your career or in your life as well. Because sometimes you can overdo too much of something,
right?
And catch yourself. And then sometimes you can use that to catch myself with that procrastination that I have to pray about all the time. I said, "Now, wait a minute, I know good well I was supposed to get out there and do that yard like 3 weeks ago." So that is a very good one. And I was, looked on me and I said, "Wow, I have to accept that one."
Yeah.
So that's
sometimes at the end of the day, it's like, I can just do this tomorrow. Right. But I think every one of them, we can have different times when we need to, step up in those areas.
Yeah.
For example, admitting wrongdoing. I can definitely, it's easy for me to confess to the Lord and just go on, but then to ask people for forgiveness, it's like, it's not always easy.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead, Edda.
Yes, I think I was thinking about taking responsibility for my actions, because when you, especially in the workplace or you're in ministry, your character and your actions, if you make a mistake or do something wrong and you don't take responsibility for it, then people lose trust in you. And if you have a staff, working under you, or if you're part of a group, and you have a supervisor that, put you over, or you're doing something and you can't be trusted, that you lose character, you lose trust in the employees there, your colleagues.
Mhm.
So I think taking responsibility for your actions and saying that, okay, I made a mistake, I didn't do this right, and then so that you could be trusted.
And sometimes people applaud us, right, for admitting our wrong, and sometimes we have negative reactions. We get disciplined for that, even though we came forward and admitted we did something that wasn't right. So it's kind of, but
Yeah,
the important thing is before the Lord, right?
right.
That we
And
have integrity before the Lord and do what the Lord expects.
and even if you do get disciplined for it, you still, like you say, it's before the Lord. You repented to Him, and then you ask for forgiveness from those who you've worked for, your supervisor or colleagues. But then, you leave the door open for improvement, and trust. And that's the thing, especially when I work for the government, when and you have a lot of people that come through there. You don't really, some people, others you don't really know that well, but your name, they do know. They look at what you've done. You got writing, reports, you got things that you put out there. And if you lose integrity, when you get ready to do a report or something, people are going to not, trust you, like they should. And yes, you may get some, because I remember someone came up to me and said, I don't know why you tell somebody that you do things wrong or you made a mistake. You shouldn't do that. They thought that would keep me from promoting, But I told them, I said, no. I said, that's not how I am. I said, I think that being more open, and they're from the old school then, where you don't tell anything, you keep everything, hush, hush. Mm-hmm. And I told them, no, I'm not like that. And so when some courses of integrity came up, when there were some tests, exams, and they were accused of some things, their word was not taken,
Right.
Yeah, because people knew them to be people that hide stuff and not use the best judgment or have the best character. So in the long run, it works out for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments about that? Okay, I'm gonna in a couple of weeks we're going to be doing a class on debriefing, and so sometimes in the past there's been people that have gone through a traumatic type of situation that we have used in our debriefing. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to go through a whole formal debriefing, but I will give you copies of how to go through a formal debriefing, whether or not we actually do that. We're not often involved in that. For example, if we worked with first responders or police, they always go through an incident debriefing, right? And so sometimes just when we're dealing with people, we kind of help them de-escalate the intensity of their response informally. Go ahead, Madeline. Were you going to say something?
No, my head.
Well, because the light came on your screen, so I just thought you were starting to say something. So what I ask from the people that are participating is if you've had an incident that you would like us to go through a debriefing with you as a class, because we are going to go through a debriefing and use that incident as our topic, please, you can bring it up now or get back in touch with me, and then we kind of do a role play of a debriefing using that incident. For example, in the past, one of our ladies, her son had a friend who was killed in one of those ATV vehicles, rolled over and was killed. You know, and he was like, I don't know if he was in middle school, or he probably was in middle school. So we used that as a debriefing. One of our guys had a cousin that was hit and killed by a car. So we went through that as a debriefing. So if you've got something that you would like to use as a topic, then let me know, and we can do that. Otherwise, I will come up with something that I think would be applicable and interesting, informative for the group that we have today. Okay, any other thoughts or questions before we go on? All right, let me get the screen share up. So today we're going to continue with grief and loss, just kind of not exactly a review, but going back over some of the things and covering different recovering, you know, emphasizing different topics, because it is such an important topic. So we're in week 8, and as you know, I was looking at tonight's homework at the beginning of the class. So these kind of questions that we're going to go on the slide here of how to know if somebody needs help are kind of generic. They can apply to just about any type of loss that we're wondering about, but it's in extreme situations. Do they need to go to a therapist? Do we need to go beyond the support of a friend or our clergy or a chaplain? Do we need some professional help? And perhaps sometimes they need medication. So when you say, do you ever wonder if you'll recover from this loss, or will you survive? I mean, sometimes in day-to-day life, it says, is this ever going to end, right? But when they're seriously deep in depression and pain and overwhelmed, do they feel like they're never going to recover? And as we've talked, giving hope is one of the things, that light at the end of the tunnel, which helps motivate people to continue. Another question, do you wonder if it's all right to continue with your life without whatever or whomever has been lost to you? Because some people feel guilty. You've heard of survivor's guilt. Why was I the one to survive? And it's not fair that this person died and I'm still here. Why did they have to suffer that? Why am I still here? Why didn't it happen to me? And do you wonder if you can be happy and fulfilled knowing that what you have lost is really gone and your life will now be different? Again, all these 3 questions we often ask ourselves, but it's in that deep despair. How long does it last? Is it just today I'm bummed out and feel, or is it after weeks? Okay, so have people come to you or talk to you with any of these attitudes? All right, well, I'm going to play a short video. Where did it go? Get it bigger.
Answers to the questions you just asked, correct?
Right.
Questions. Let me look at it again. Yeah, so do you ever wonder if you recover from a loss? Okay. When people are in the grieving process, I think most of these questions, if not all, the bullet points comes up. And, it's so hard to know how to help people when they're grieving. So a lot of times, I don't say, "Is you all right?" I try to watch my words, and I just try to show up and be available as much as I can. Check in. Uh, Sometimes it's all right. I depend on the person to see what kind of help they need. When it comes to like getting counseling, from my perspective, I think anyone that's experiencing a loss of some type of grief or trauma should get some form of counseling. I lean more to spiritual counseling, but clinical counseling, I don't oppose that neither. But we need someone to help us navigate the grieving process.
It's
Things out.
helpful, isn't
So
it, to have somebody walking with us. We don't need comforters like Job, but yeah,
right,
but somebody helping us. And some people, one of our ladies, her daughter, when she was killed, went to a grief support group one time, and that was good. Some people go to these type of meetings or meet together with other people more frequently, and sometimes, like when my daughter died, my husband and I were able to be comforted within just our immediate, within ourselves together, and with the closer immediate church family friends. So the thing is, often we feel like embarrassed maybe that we're Christians, we shouldn't have to look other places. But like I mentioned last week, this is going to show a short video from some people involved with Grief Share, which I was wondering if, I mean, they often have grief share support churches, groups in churches, but this might be a place where you could exercise some of your help by volunteering in this type of a support group, or even getting in touch with Grief Share and starting a group in your local congregation, right? Because it's a place also where people in the world are looking for help, and they often participate and can get some direction from God, an input from God in their situation. So I'm just going to play this. All right.
Just came over me. They died in November. In February, I fell apart. Heaviness just came over me where I just started weeping uncontrollably. And it's like your whole world fell apart. It seemed like my God put the pause button on in my life. I just wanted to stay by myself. I didn't want to do anything. And I just started to lose it, but it was like, I can't lose it because I'm the Christian one here. If I lose it, it'll be a bad testimony. You can't remember things. And the simple things like, where you put your car keys. Did you turn something off? Did you turn something on? Did you cry about this already? Something I cried earlier today. And you go outside and you look around and you wonder why the whole world just doesn't stop for this period of time. People are still going to Disneyland and eating ice cream cones, and don't they know what horrific thing has gone on? One day someone you love will die. When this happens, you'll likely experience more pain than you've ever imagined. I'm Zig Ziglar.
Burying my daughter was painful, and it taught me this. When you're grieving, it's not the time to be strong. It's the time to be human. That's why I needed people who would listen to me, care for me, and point me to the comfort that only God offers. And if you or someone you know is grieving, you need the same.
I think one of the major difficulties that I've seen over the years of people in grief is that we live in a culture that does not talk about loss or grief. People are unaware of it. And then all of a sudden they're plunged into it. And at the time where they are at the most vulnerable point of their life, the most vulnerable place, intense pain, they also have to learn about the reality of what grief is. And many people think, basically, I'm going crazy. What is this happening to me? I'm going over the edge. They're going to lock me up. But if we know ahead of time, this is grief. It's what to expect. Then we can realize I'm not going crazy. I just have to go through this experience. There's a fog inside of our brain, as it were. And you'll be talking to somebody, and all of a sudden in the middle of your discussion, it's like, what was I talking about? You're not as sharp. This is why we tell people, be careful when you're driving, because this is a time of your life when you're most likely to get a ticket or have an accident. And I'll say, have you ever been driving and you don't remember the last 10 blocks? And they say, oh my goodness, yes. It's like I woke up down here and I wondered what happened in the last 10 blocks. And that's happened to me as well. And so we're not as sharp. As I work with high school kids who have been through tragedies, I have to talk to the teachers about lower your expectations when it comes to the grading. They're not going to be remembering. I remember one young man that talked to me after a shooting in the high school. He said, I knew all this material before the shooting. Now I go back and it's like, I've never seen it before. What happened to my brain? It's like it just wiped it out. And this is what grief does to us. I think for me, grief work is the process of looking at my grief and facing the fact that I am in grief. And there are going to be certain tasks that I'm going to need to engage in. I'll give you an example of this. In the death of a spouse, people will say, oh, they lost their husband or they lost their wife. That is the primary loss. But you have a whole list of what we call secondary losses. Lost a confidant, an errand runner, somebody who took the trash out, somebody who took care of the bills. You're going to lose your couple friends. It goes on from there. There's usually about 20 to 30 secondary losses. If we identify those and we know those in advance, then we're not going to be ambushed as much. We'll realize, okay, this is another loss that I'm going to need to grieve over.
Okay. Okay, so let's think about some of those things. How do we how have people reacted when in your environment when they've lost something? We think about grief as only human, that we've lost a person or a relationship, but there's other types of grief too, right? So I think listening to some of these things from people who have gone to a support group and some different ideas of what they faced is helpful. So how have people reacted around you? Go ahead, Bridget.
Yes. It's like there was a situation where there was I know someone, a girlfriend of mine, that she had her mother, her sister, and her brother all back to back within a month's time. And then at the same time this was going on, of the losses, her husband and her were having difficulties already. So they had decided to, well, she found some bad news about the marriage. So that was a grief because she decided to make it official to divorce after being married for over so many years. And then she had to deal with the loss of the 3 family members all within one month. So her, when she called me, her first thing she said that she was thinking of suicide. And I was just baffled because I didn't know how to deal with, at the time, even being in ministry, I didn't know how to deal with someone calling me, like literally saying that, I want to die. So I had to pray and try to find the words to say to her because I knew it was, that's a lot to go through with 3 family members dying. Then you have another grief of a divorce, but that's like a death when you're losing your marriage and you've been with this person for so many years and you're no longer going to see them and all of this stuff. So I felt really, really bad. So I noticed that she was calling me for the comfort part of it. So I heard Tolan come on and said that, you have to watch your way of words because you don't want to say the wrong thing, especially when someone calls and says they're suicidal, because they can't handle the loss of, like on the video, like of someone you truly love. Especially when it's your intermediate family, your mother, your sister, all the people that are close to you. So to make a long story short, I began to send her things, like inspirations and scriptures. Joyce Myers had a series on how she was being abused and how she had lost it. So those things were bringing her through. And I was sending her things of, I don't know if you guys know Sarah Jakes, T. Jakes' daughter. She's a very powerful, anointed woman of God that has a lot of series I was sending to her. So those things began to bring her around. And I thank God that she did not follow up on that suicide attempt. So that was testimony of how, I was able to, be a sister to her to during her grieving time. The loss of 3 family members all back to back within 1 month and plus the divorce. So it was all a total loss.
Right.
And like you said, there's different types of grieving. Like you were saying, this is not just grieving from loss of a loved one. It's different types of grieving that you can go through in life. Loss of a job, loss of the marriage, different things you can lose. You can lose a home that you really put your time and invested your time and money into. It's different things of losses that's a grieving process. So that was my testimony too.
And so I know it, we often put degrees of importance on these type of things, but we do have to realize that it's what's important to the people, what they've lost. But I want to jump on that thing about the lady wanting to end her life, right? And so, we don't know what to say oftentimes when people are desperate. But what we do need to do is do an assessment. If a quick assessment is this to see if this is something that could happen imminently, right away. For example, do they have a plan? Do they have are they just desperate? Do they have something set in place of how they were going to bring this about? Do they have the means? They were planning on using a handgun or taking pills. Are those things in their medicine cabinet, right? Do they have the means to do that? And then you also have to try to evaluate the extent of, are they going to try to do this right now? And so in that types of cases, we did mention a liability if somebody is serious about doing something right away. Because normally when someone says that, they're serious, they mean it. And when we did the class on suicide, we talked about many people, many of us have had thoughts and feelings like that. It's not uncommon. How many of the people in society have had thoughts? How many people have thought of ways to do it? And how many people have actually have the means available at their fingertips to do it? Very few people that just go and, like talking to Bridget, and then they hang up the phone and go crash their car off of a bridge. But that does happen too, right? There is immediate circumstances. Many years ago, when we were young, we were in charge of a youth group, and one of the young men that was in our youth group was drunk or something, and he hung himself. So my husband and the pastor went down to the emergency room with the parents called. He did survive, but then there's those type of things too, when people are under the influence of some type of a substance and a thought comes to them, somebody provokes them, or the devil puts a thought into them, and they don't have our logical reasoning inhibitions to make us stop and think about what we're doing, or that normal fear, and they have, because of the substance, they just go and do that, or commit a violent act or a crime or something. So it's, it's important for us to do a quick assessment when we're talking to somebody, because we always take that statement seriously, even if the person has a history of threatening just for attention, right? Because we don't want that on our conscience, that we didn't act on something like that. And we do well to have a local support. Your county emergency hotline, they always have trained people who have been taught what to say and to evaluate. And if somebody so to refer them to that person, or if they are serious, keep them on the line and call 911 and send an emergency services to them, right? Keep them on the line till somebody gets there. So you can refer them to the 24-hour helplines, because they are trained, and not that we're not trained, but they have the specific steps of what to do. And because they have that certificate, as I mentioned with that chaplain that didn't have any kind of suicide certificate training, and he got reprimanded because he was encouraging them biblically. So we want to be very diligent when somebody is in that frame of mind.
Mhm.
All right. So how do we bring hope into seemingly hopeless situations without just giving the people platitudes? Because I think this is what is Bridget talked about, giving certain amount of encouraging videos and cards or whatever, or messages, or little memes or whatever kind of. Well, how do we bring hope into what they see as hopeless?
I think sometimes it's just by being there, which is really, it becomes difficult sometimes if you're working every day and you have things to do, but the person, especially I'm talking about a loss of life. From what I heard from someone that I know that lost their 15-year-old child, and let's see, this July it'll be 2 years. They want people constantly around them. That gives them hope. They go to counseling, Christian counseling, but they just need people there. They said even if they don't say anything, they just need someone in their presence, because that makes them feel that everything is going to work out and be all right. But people are backing off now because everyone just can't continue in that vein for, like I said, it's going on 2 years. So the person is upset because people are backing off, because they're saying all they need is for someone, to be there. So they want, and by being there, they mean literally. They want them in their presence. And it's like, okay, I know you're getting counseling. I know you're getting Christian counseling. I know that you are a person that really believes in Jesus Christ, and you live your life that way. But I don't know. I think it's PTSD. I think it's beyond just grief.
It could be, right? And if they're getting counseling, that person, a therapist, can evaluate that. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? We're going to continue.
Well, they've been getting counseling. Like I said, the person died a year and a half ago, and they've been getting counseling from about since that time. But they're still like, as a matter of fact, scolded her husband because she said, it's like you don't miss her. And it's like, okay, but he does, but he's working it out, whereas she's not. It's like, I'm supposed to always miss her. I'm supposed to always have her on my mind, and I don't want to ever let this go. So I really don't, because I'm not going to be there like that. I don't think it's healthy.
Okay, you brought up several very good points for us to go over, and hopefully I tried jotting them down, so hopefully we can talk about that. So one of those important things, I'm going to put that, let me write this down, is just being there, right? I was going to say, when Bridget was talking, we think like we have to have the answers, but we just being there is showing support, and that someone cares about them, and that's very, very important. So, and it's very normal after 2 years for people to taper off, right? But someone that is aware understands that it's still helpful. You still need, even after 10 years of the anniversary of their child's death, there might still be pangs, and having somebody acknowledge that loss to them, pardon me, is very important. Okay. And then we have to look at, she could be extreme, right? In the depth and the way that this has affected her. And there is that possibility it couldn't hurt to get an evaluation, correct? Because if there is some type of diagnosis or something that can be attributed to that, and there is protocol for how to deal with that. Then the other thing you mentioned, I mean, anybody can jump in at any time. I'm just trying to bring up some of the things that we've already discussed in previous sessions, that not everybody deals with loss the same. Some people have to go out and do something. They just have to be busy. Some people are very demonstrative. Some people hold things in. The one man in the video talked about withdrawing, right? Just getting away from people and wanting to be alone. And so there's different ways. And of course, scolding another loved one because they're not doing it the way she is short-sighted, because she's getting the same treatment, right? That people don't understand the extent or where she is in her grief trail, because the journey, the road is different lengths and different ups and downs. The waves, ups and downs are different for every person depending on their personality. Thankfully, as Madeline said, the person is a committed Christian, does have support from, I would imagine when you say Christian counselor, that it's clergy and not a licensed therapist, although it could be. You know, she needs understanding, and she still needs people to be aware of and not diminish, not invalidate her loss. And that's the common thing that she said to her husband, oh, it's like you've forgotten her. Well, that's a common thing too, that people hold on to that. And we even talked about it, I think, as one of the points last week, that we hold on to it because we think if we don't feel that immense sadness, that we're going to forget them. So, and then it's normal after a 2-year period of time for the attention to wane, but it's not inappropriate on the anniversary of her child's death to send a card acknowledging, or a text just showing a hug, right? I've done that, and it also makes a difference. We talked about NASH, natural, accidental, suicidal, or homicidal, the way and manner in which they died. It is not normal for someone's teenage child to pass away. It's not normal for our children to go before we do. So has a different impact than if your 90-year-old parent or grandparent goes home to be with the Lord. And then there's also issues when the people are not Christian, or they're, that make us very sensitive and give us stronger, go ahead, Etta, stronger responses.
Okay, I was thinking about when you were talking about, like, after 2 years, people start trying to kind of wean away from that a little bit. Well, I have a friend that her son died. Her daughter-in-law, the first year, wanted to have like a little celebration. Okay, where people come and gather around, and balloons and all that, And then the next year, she did the same thing. However, her brother-in-law kind of told her, no, we're not going to do this, or I'm not going to participate after, the second year. He said no, because it keeps bringing it up, and it's not like, he just rejected that after the 2-year period. Mm-hmm. So that would make me think about that. Maybe he was had accepted him, and as I don't think he was meaning he didn't want to remember his brother, but I don't think he wanted to celebrate it, like she did. So,
Right. And sometimes those type of things kind of dredge up all the same tragic emotions, right? And nobody likes to go through that all again. But I think one of the best things that we could do is just to be there somehow. And earlier this year, somebody I've known since I was a teenager, when I came to the Lord, her husband passed away a couple months ago, and she just said, just send me a couple texts. Just send me a text every so often, right? Because she's kind of a stay-at-home kind of person, and she was no longer working, and now she's getting out a little bit. There's somebody that comes and gets her to go out every so often. But she just said it would be helpful to you just to remember me in a text. So I try to remember, and sometimes I think, oh, I should text her, and then 2 or 3 days has gone by. But even if you contact somebody once a week, and remember different anniversaries, especially early in the first year, but even 2 years on is very normal to have very strong feelings of loss. So thank you, Madeline, for bringing all those things up, because it brought out, I think, some important ideas to refresh ourselves on. And also, Edda's incident, the brother-in-law was, this is done. I'm not going to do this. And it's okay, because that's his way. Thank you. I will remember that one and take care of it, Kathy. So it's just remembering important days, and always remembering at special holidays and things like that. They're more sensitive. Even 10 years later, people have difficulties at Christmas time, for example. So, any other comments? I think one of the things about bringing hope is showing that there is a light, there is going through it, that it's not always going to be the same feeling, the same situation. It's not always going to be just like it is today. And of course, with Christ, the fact that he knows the feelings of our infirmities, and the comfort that we can get from the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, is absolutely essential. Anybody else? Okay, we're just going to go back over this idea again. What is loss? The fact or process of losing something or someone. And we always rate things according to what we think is important. The same year that my daughter died, I've mentioned this before, another lady from our congregation had a huge flood in her house and lost very precious photographs and memory objects, keepsakes. So understanding, well, she was like, well, this wasn't anything compared to your loss, but it was still a deep loss. If I lost everything, my sister was in a hurricane and lost a lot of memorabilia, keepsakes from our grandparents and childhood and that type of thing. So those kind of things can kind of help us lose our equilibrium and the feeling of our roots. So it's losing something or someone. Obviously, I think, well, I won't say that, because I think Yeah, because I say it's in a different slide. The state or feeling of grief when deprived of someone or something of value. So it's a state of being, and feelings are relative in intensity, right? But it is a state of being. If that Edda's friend's husband, no, it was Madeline's friend's husband lost the same daughter, but his feeling of grief was different. Okay, but we've been deprived of it. When we're deprived of the dignity that God created us to operate in, that can be, we can grieve that. Okay, statistics show that 70% of the people we talk to already have experienced loss or a personal crisis in their lives. And so when we when we talk about crisis intervention and loss, that is different than trauma. We can experience a traumatic event, but it doesn't affect everybody traumatically. And the state of our being does help us to, does affect how we deal with the loss, right? I think it's Proverbs 18:14 talks about the spirit of man sustains him in his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? If I've been debilitated by sickness or an embarrassing, humiliating event at work or whatever, then I'm not as strong and able to absorb the results, the feelings of these kind of loss. So that's when it's especially important for us to be building people up. And we talked about just using trite sayings. I don't think did I say it? I think I said it in the talk about communications. There, we can just say, oh, well, you know, he was a good man. He lived a good life. She lived a good life. You know, you'll get over it. You'll meet somebody new. You can have another one. Or for a child, you're the man of the house now. Just be strong. You don't have to cry. You know, we don't want people to not express. And we did talk about there are people that just lose all control and are in an extreme state of distress continually, and limiting those moments of expression to specific times so that it's not coming out all the time. So grief is an intense emotional suffering. So we have that in many, many instances. Deep sorrow, especially caused by someone's death. Grief and loss can come in many forms. It's not always about death, and it's not always catastrophic. For example, the loss of a car versus the loss of a child. So we have loss of life, loss of health, loss in finances. We have loss of positions. Back in 2008, so many people that we know suddenly after 20 years of employment had no more employment. So they've lost it. And it used to be just males identified so strongly with their occupation, that I'm a truck driver, I'm a welder, I'm a doctor, but now more and more, because so many women have careers, they identify more with being with their job than being a wife or mother or a sister or a Christian. So there's different kinds of grief and loss. So we know that there's many, many symptoms of grief. There's feelings of grief. There's highs and lows in a person's life, and it doesn't all take place all the time. And it doesn't necessarily end. It doesn't disappear completely. I think one of the things that people used to do that remembering people on the anniversary of their birth. My mom always would talk about Uncle so-and-so's birthday is today. He would have been XYZ years or whatever, that type of thing. And just, we don't honor people's lives. We don't value life as we used to. So it's kind of sad. Any comments or questions or observations that you've had that you'd like to bring out at this time?
Yeah, Trish, it's like my grandchild car was stolen, and so it's when you were saying about the state of mind that one is in, can attribute to the grief, because she's overwhelmed in school. She's a junior. She's taking 4 AP classes, which is, really
Yeah.
too many for her to be, taking at one time. And the car was stolen. And so she's just been, in crying frenzies and everything. And she only had the car for 6 months before it was stolen. And she's feeling the grief of partially, she knows it's her fault because she had the, what do they call that? The thing you put on the steering wheel.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what it's called either. Some kind of bar, I think. But yeah.
I have one. I don't know why it's called. I guess it's one of those.
It's called the club.
Yeah, the club. Right.
Okay.
So she's feeling, that, but then the police called a couple of days ago and said that, we have retrieved the car, but we can't release it to you because it's been involved in a death. And she didn't ask about, did someone get hit or was someone killed in the car? She doesn't care. I just want my car. Just give me my car. My thought is, my goodness, your car has been involved in a death. You still want that car? So that's where my thought process is. Her thought process is, hey, I'm sorry, but just give me my car. And
Right.
and she's in the Christian youth groups and all that. She's volunteers and everything, but I think it's because of her state of mind right now, with everything just being so overwhelming, and that became another overwhelming thing. And so it's like, okay, I don't care, just give me my car.
Right. It's not reasonable, but it does seem to be the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And
Right.
we're not, when we have these things go off in our brain, let's remind ourselves that there's stress hormones that are released. We have that flight, fight, or freeze thing that goes on in our brain. So there's not a interacting in our brains to be able to reason with people. It's like a child in a tantrum. You can't reason with them because they've got all this cortisol shooting through their system, and they're not gonna, and they don't reason anyway when they're little kids, right? So, you can't expect her to reason. She just wants her car back. I don't care about this, but is it reasonable? No. But you're right. She's just all stretched out and on ends, and there's that, this, but it's not going to help anything because there's a process. There's a process to a chain of evidence that they need that car, and and then there's the other thing. If it's been involved in that, some people aren't going to want that car back because of a death, right? Some people don't want to live in a house where someone died or wear clothes that somebody or of a person who's deceased. And let's go on to the next point then. Grief is a lingering process that encompasses a number of changes. So people have to make changes inside of themselves to be able to move forward. If I leave my dead aunt's house the way she had it, and that can be unhealthy, right? Forever and ever. You have to realize that things have changed, and it takes a little bit of time sometimes to deal with getting rid of assets and possessions. I don't want to use the word. I'm trying to think of a better word of getting rid of, but it just keeps missing the correct, a more appropriate word of when we, dismantle our estates. But you can't hold on to those things forever. Okay, things can take a long time. We do need to accept changes. We talked about different stages, and they don't necessarily come in an order. They can jump back and forth. And we talked about mourning and being able to express our grief and how that can be healthy and it can be unhealthy depending on how we do it. Okay. When someone calls and says, this has happened, I can't believe it, I felt numbness, I felt unbelief, we can't say, it didn't really happen. It couldn't have happened. This couldn't be over. This couldn't have happened. And then we try to diminish the reality of the situation, that saying that, oh, it's not that bad. Well, if your house is destroyed by a hurricane or tornado, how can you tell me that it's not that bad, right? And to tell your granddaughter that that's not that bad, it's not going to help her, because to her, her situation is maxed out, right? So just trying to understand where they're coming from is very helpful. Sometimes we have guilt that I should have done this, or if I had only done this, it would have been different. People get angry. They get angry at people for not responding. They get angry at God for why did he let this happen. As Christians, we don't want to ask why. We think it shows a lack of faith, but these things come to us. I don't get it, God. What's going on here? No one is immune to suffering. It's a part of our world, and people in other parts of the world have an infinite more or less comfortable situations and suffering, particularly Christians throughout the world. So asking why is a question we don't want to invalidate. Why me? Why now? It's a natural response. And that's what I try to tell people. This is a natural question that comes to you, but is it something that God wants us to have answered? Is this where we want to focus our attention? If we can kind of redirect to things that can get answered. We can't answer the question, why did that drunk driver kill my sister? That's just there's no answer for that. It's devastating. So we want to try to have healthy communication and encourage interaction with the person. Okay, we want to listen to their experience. I was listening to to a video the other day that talked about it's very normal for people to want to talk about the person or thing that they've lost. And they just need someone to listen. When I remember a couple years ago, my mom was having a number of health concerns, and that was all her conversation was about, was, you know, but this was what was the foremost in her mind, and that was what was concerning her. And it helps people to, I just told my husband the other day, we hate the word process. We need to come up with a better word than process, because it's becoming one of those cliches. But it helps us work through the situation when we repeat it. So comparing our experiences isn't healthy. I've heard people say, well, I got through it, they can too. Thinking you have to have the answer. I may share what I've done in that situation, and it may have worked for me, but it may not be the answer that they need. And sometimes when people talk to us, they do not want you to come up with a solution and fix it. They want you to listen to them. They want to express that. And I think we have a famine of listening to people today. We don't pay attention, especially like with little kids. They want to communicate and they're saying all this goofy stuff, and you're just ignoring them. But you need to respond to them. I was doing a child care video, and there's a thing called serve and return, that the child says something to you and you respond to it because they want your attention. And that goes with adults too. I want you to respond to me when I'm saying something. You know, we have that old cartoon or whatever of a man behind a paper in the morning saying while the wife is talking. It shows respect and honor when we pay attention to what somebody is saying. And then there's many hurtful things that we can say to people, and that happens very frequently when there's a loss. So I'm trying to think. I don't have a list of different sayings that people have said that are just like, you really said that to the person? Give me a break. I don't know if you guys can think of anything that they've heard people say that's just like, I can't believe you said that. But okay, we want to build bridges, not walls. So that in communication we can say or do things or show patience or facial expressions. Go ahead, Bridget.
Yes, I'm just going back to that little part you just said about saying things to people, like, did they really say that? That's like my ex-husband had said that, because like I said, Mother's Day is always hard for me. And I don't know, you know, I do good sometimes all through the year, but for some reason, when that comes around, I really have a rough time. So this year, he convinced me, you know, maybe you should go out of the service and, you know, let me celebrate you and see how you do. And it was terrible. It didn't work out. So he said something to me at the dinner table. He said, I can't believe you. You know, look at you. Your face is all wet and everything. You're going bananas. You should have been over this. And I said, what did you say to me? You have your mother, right? He said, yes. I said, let me tell you this. Don't ever, ever tell a person that they should have been over death and grief. That is something that I will never get over. I'm just dealing with it. I'm coping with it because I know that's something that my mother would want me to do, is to be depressed and to be sick and to overcome this. So I'm coping with it. But don't ever say those words to anyone, because the death and the grief of a mother, of a son, daughter, of anyone that was close to someone, that is something that you would never forget. All the days of my life, I'll never get over that. That my mother left me at such an early age. She died at 34 years old. lost both. She had a double mastectomy. She lost her father's cancer. So I will always celebrate her. And if that's something I can't do, to go out in the public on Mother's Day, then that's something that you should accept. And if I was handling it, if I broke down, that was horrible to say to me that I should have been over that. It was terrible. So what you just said about, did that person just say that? That just came to my mind when you said that. So you do have to watch how you, come in contact with someone who has lost and who is grieving. Because that could throw somebody under. I could have went home and blew my head off. So you have to be very, very careful. So true.
We do have to be careful. I think just showing some type of understanding and patience, because just saying, being understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How you ask a question can be important. For example, when you say, "How are you doing?" versus "How are you holding up?" Okay, so I always try to find another thing that sounds good besides just "How are you holding up?" because when you realize the difference in the effect, a lot of people with training or chaplains say that, and it sometimes sounds kind of trite, but I'm trying to find something that is, trying to indicate how are you maintaining yourself? How are you handling the situation? So so we want to give them our attention. We want to let them talk about it. And like Madeline, you don't have to agree or disagree. If you don't have to tell them, "Oh, yeah, I agree with you," or "I disagree with you." I can see how you would see it that way. I understand where you're coming from. Don't say "I agree" to disagree, by the way. Okay, when you're talking.
Yeah. I know I don't say anything like that. Those are the thoughts that are in my mind. It's
Right,
like with
right. That's good.
tell her I would want to. You really still want that car? I didn't say that to her. I said it
I
to
know you're
myself.
saying it to us. I knew that. Sometimes people do, though, right?
Yeah.
Open questions versus a question that has a yes or no answer. Tell me about this. Tell me about your day. Tell me about how you were feeling. Help them to identify, evaluate, and express their feelings. I think that's important when you put a name to it, when they can say, "Oh, this is how I'm feeling," or "This is what's going on," or "This is why this came up," and being able to be free to express their feelings. Okay. There are different ways to actions they can take. Donations in people's names, people do that all the time. That can help them feel better or feel more positively about the loss. And as I mentioned, some people find a support group helpful. One man that I knew that had problems with alcohol found a support group a hindrance because all the people around him were saying about how hard it was and their dependence on alcohol or whatever. And it didn't encourage him at all to abstain. So he thought it was not helpful, but it is helpful to know that other people are going forward, not getting over, or, they're going forward, they're moving forward and making progress in their recovery, right? Because it is like an injury. And that's what I was talking about with mourning. Our bodies heal, and it can take time depending on the type of the injury. But the same thing with loss. God was not surprised that we would suffer loss, although we were never created that to face the things we faced. God made a preparation for it in our healing of our bodies and our minds, and that's one of the important things about sleep. Sleep gives our mind a rest. We get restored and refreshed. Okay. So because we're out there, not limited to the church walls, there are people who don't have a church home. Okay, just because you have a church home doesn't mean you get support. I understand that. But they don't have a church body, the body of Christ, to help them. There are those who have stopped attending church because of various reasons. And they get hurt by the church, or something has happened that's embarrassing as far as Christianity. People who don't speak the language. People have died while they're away from home. So somebody could be on vacation or whatever. They don't have the support, or they're on a business trip. They don't have their family and friends around. People that have to go for special treatment outside of their area. They don't have the support system. When you've relocated or are in a move, those have been abused by organized religion. Okay, this happens a lot more today because families are dysfunctional. They don't have that support system. We talked about single mothers. They don't often have the support, and the children don't have the support. There's people that have been marginalized by society. We talk about the homeless, but there's others. And in India, for example, there's the case that's the untouchables. Well, you're just suffering because of your previous life, and you deserve what you get. That's their philosophical belief. And so there's people that don't receive relief because they deserve it. Sometimes we are not able to participate in things because we are homebound because of a health issue, and people do not understand how to deal with people or with disabilities, especially if it's something like autism, or where you can function physically, or other mental health issues, right? Severe depression, people don't understand how those type of health issues, mental disorders and disabilities. Young children, we forget about the young children who are affected in loss, the ones that have been upset by being ripped out of their homes or losing a loved one. And that's one of the things about helping to expose children to the reality of life without filters, not using filters, not just throwing them out there like a baby to a pack of wolves. That with protection, we teach them how to handle certain things, and that way, when they're older and making decisions, they have the foundation. We talked about that commercial, not letting our kid know that the animals die. when they grew up on the farms, they saw animals mate, they saw animals die. Those kind of things were the life cycle. And sometimes, you know, we were talking about education. We don't prepare our children for what they're going to find out in the world. And we need to help them and support them. And, you know, ex-spouses or in-laws. I have an old school friend who basically grew up with her niece because she was the youngest and her brother was very much older, and his daughter was almost like her sister, just a younger sister. And he and the brother and her sister-in-law divorced. And because of the relationship with her brother, when the daughter died, they didn't even tell them or allow them to attend the funeral. And this was like her sister, you know. So a lot of times the breaking up of relationships are very difficult. Or you've been the daughter-in-law or son-in-law of somebody, and they passed, and you had so many years of relationship with that person, but yet it's very awkward for you for people to give you the right to mourn them because you're an ex, especially if there's a new partner. So there's a lot of understanding that we need to do as far as helping people in their losses. Any comments or questions about our discussion today? I don't see any hands, so we can continue, and I'll just talk about reading chapters 7 through 9 in the Crisis and Trauma book. Next week, we're going to talk about crisis and trauma, Lord willing, right? And chapter 7 in the ethics book and the week 8 questions for chapter 7, how to develop the Midas touch in the manual.